What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. You know what the really cool thing about having your own studio is you can be sitting here having an impromptu conversation with a young, hungry entrepreneur and be like, shit, this is some really good content. Let's throw on the cameras and add this into Coffee and Grit. And so I'm super excited to have Hayden Larance.
Yep.
Hayden Larance in the studio here today. We're going to talk about what he's doing to add value and make a difference in other businesses in their business, but also just that hustle and that drive as a young entrepreneur figuring it out. And like I said, we had 20 minutes of just really engaging conversation. So let's have at it. So, so Hayden, man, welcome 100%. To the studio.
Appreciate you having me. It's an honor to be here. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. So is this your first time ever in a podcast studio?
First time ever. Only experience is watching podcasts like yours, and at the gym, driving, and it's surreal to be on a podcast, to be honest.
That's cool. That was the inspiration, being always in sales, being in leadership. And at a young age, I had a mentor that told me, like, hey, if you really want to take this serious, you need to like constantly develop yourself. Yep. And, so I was always into reading anyways and like personal development stuff, but then it's like taking it to that next level of when I'm driving, I had CDs that I'd pop in, or, then it turned into the podcast, like Andy Frisilla and stuff like that. And when I started my business, it was like, I'm having all these conversations like this. And then, other people need to hear these stories. Right. Because I was that person, I was going out and having these conversations with people, but there are so many people that start a business and then they go out and they do it alone and they think their challenges are unique. But guess what? Even if you're in a different industry, a lot of your challenges are the same challenges that I've had or that I've went through or that Mike Noonan's went through.
Yeah, 100%. And even just talking with you today, it helps so much because I think what I've learned is a lot of the time you do feel alone. You feel like you're the only one that's going through the challenges, and to hear other people that have had the same experience and just kind of the camaraderie around the struggle and kind of building through that, it's super valuable for me. So
that's cool, man. So how did you get started?
Yeah, so I got started trying to think. Kind of been involved in a couple of businesses now. This is the first time I've kind of branched out on my own. But I went to Michigan State. While I was there, I had the opportunity to study abroad. I met a guy over there that we started kind of like a online learning language platform. So you join with people from other countries and have conversations. And kind of the route that we were going with that was kind of selling to colleges and to schools. And so I worked on that for about a year and a half throughout college, and we started, we ended up getting MSU as a partner in terms of just, trialing the program and seeing how it worked, and UVA down in Virginia as well. And it went well. There were so many things that, we were trying to figure out how to put together and monetize it at the same time, and just kind of, differences in opinion, experience levels. It ended up not working out. But through that, I was kind of the lead on sales and reaching out to universities, getting on meetings, talking to people. It's one of my first experiences with, having something to sell and talking to somebody that doesn't know who I am and figuring out kind of how that whole interaction goes. So I kind of fell in love with it at that point. And, like long story short, at the end, stopped doing that. It was fall of last year, and kind of end of June, moved out to Philadelphia to work in sales. And, like we were having a conversation before this, I didn't enjoy what I was selling. I was working for kind of a sales broker that does like energy supply for NRG, which is a huge energy supply company. And I know they have like one of the Houston football team down there, their stadium's named after them. But yeah, just approaching people in grocery stores, and kind of the whole gig down there was, we're giving out free gift cards to anybody that has an opposing energy supply company. And the whole time throughout that conversation, just slowly explaining to them that, we were going to switch them from one provider to another. And that's the whole reason that you're getting the gift card. And just that coupled with a few other things, it just kind of felt scammy to me, and I didn't like it. And throughout that whole time, I was just thinking, how can I do my own thing? start my own thing to where I feel good about it, and I have more freedom, and I'm not, I don't drive an hour each way, and I don't even get on the clock yet. And so that's kind of what I started, what I'm doing now. Um, my business is called Amistad Digital, and I would say um, mainly focused in automations. Kind of the majority of the businesses I work with right now are through reputation management. So review collection, reputation online, review automation, things like that, to where kind of just simplify the process of them, getting feedback from their customers, and looking better to everybody else in the community.
That's so cool. Because as you're thinking about like how to have your own thing, how did you come up with this aspect in like the brand management or reputation management?
Yeah, so kind of YouTube University, honestly.
I love it.
I think now after talking to a lot of different guys, just kind of going on and searching, like, how can I make money online? How can I start my own business? I think, there's so many like gurus out there and people that you can listen to. And I kind of started with the whole Google Ads thing. And just for me, the thought, especially starting, of reaching out to a business and saying, hey, you're going to have to pay me, and on top of that pay
The
however many
ads.
thousands of dollars for ads. It didn't make sense, and I wasn't really having any success. And found different videos from kind of guys that are now mentoring me and that I work with, Clay Lawrence, Kai Stone, or two. And they're heavily involved in school. I don't know if school communities or anything,
Mm.
but that's a platform that Hormozy's super involved in investment wise. But kind of like online platforms for entrepreneurs and people that are just looking to learn skills, to connect. And just seemed a lot more simple of a model to me, where I can come to somebody and say, hey, reviews are important. You care about getting reviews. I can essentially help you streamline that to where you don't have to worry about asking anymore, and kind of get that going on autopilot. So that's how it started. And yeah, it's from there. It's just been mostly figuring out the sales process. And now I'm at the point where kind of the sales seems to be running a little bit more smoothly, and trying to figure out how to, customer retention, customer success, things like that. I'm still, like I told you, I'm a one-man show here. So all of those things are overwhelming individually, and then putting them all together, it's definitely just trying to figure out how to manage the ecosystem.
Well, because you're doing the marketing, the
Yeah.
sales, and then when you sell something, you got to then go do the thing.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And like, for example, if I talk to somebody and they're like, hey, we don't really, have that many customers, so reviews aren't, super important, or it wouldn't be as much value, but do you do websites? And, me being, just starting, trying to figure out anything, I'm like, yeah, I do, of course. And I've never built a website, but, I found through different resources, kind of templates and things that I can use to kind of, build the foundation. And then from there, I kind of took a twist on it, to where, as opposed to just having it up, I attached all sorts of kind of diving back into the automations, like lead capture automations, lead follow up, things like that, to where kind of help business owners, keep leads from falling, slipping through the cracks, and things like that. But yeah, it's been a great experience for me learning. And it's interesting just thinking about, as a business owner, like, how do you differentiate yourself? And that's how I got connected with Andrew, and eventually you, is kind of that personal connection in the networks there. So
Yeah, that's a big piece. Is how do you differentiate yourself?
right.
I do difference maker boot camp, and it's
Yeah.
sales training or business development leadership training
Yep.
for entrepreneurs, and so many people have that struggle. Like you look at real estate agents, for example, and you walk into a room and there's 4 real estate agents plus you're related to
Right.
2 others. Like,
Yeah.
how do you choose which one to go for? How do they differentiate themselves? And
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, salespeople that struggle so much. It's like, what's different between you and them? And they're like,
Right.
eh, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think whether that's the service you're providing. I mean, how many, home service, landscaping, barbershop, like, everybody's, whether you're providing the same service, I think I've kind of slowly started to realize that it's the difference maker is just me, and it's, who I am, and I'm talking with you, I'm having a conversation. We might be, especially now, everybody, but the vast majority of people I'm working with are kind of in the nucleus of southeastern Michigan, and just Michigan in general. So, that personal connection of, you have my personal phone number, we talked, I bought you coffee, things like, what can I do to just, get you to trust me and realize I'm a human being, And yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of how I want to grow. And I've you look at bigger businesses or huge companies to where you're meeting with somebody that's 10 steps down the line. And it is interesting to think about, especially how you scale or get bigger as a business. How do you keep the level of personalization? Because I think at a certain level, even for me going from the first person that I worked with to now, it's harder. It's harder to you can't be checking up every day on people, and how do you
You
let
get the
them?
one client and you can like take care of them. Like you're
Yeah,
thinking about them all day, every day. You're
100%.
following up. They're like,
Right.
Hayden, stop calling me.
Yeah. No, 100%.
To them, like, why doesn't Hayden call me anymore?
Yeah. No, one of my first clients, Robin, she owns Welcome Home Yoga out in Detroit. And it's a great studio. I actually just had the opportunity to go visit them last week. But it's when I first started working with them, first started working with Robin, I was emailing her 3 times a day and giving her calls and can I do this and that, and just so excited to be working with somebody. And then the flip side of that, the fear of once you do have a client, how do you not lose them? And it's just these are all sorts of the feelings that I'm going through, and trying to talk to people like you and others to how do you manage that and continue to grow.
And I was going to ask you, like, how did you learn these things? Like, one, I love what you said. It's so key,
Yep.
and so many people don't realize this is that the difference maker is you.
Yeah.
And I said I can teach anybody how to sell anything as long as you believe in the product.
Yep.
As long as the product or the service is good and it can help people,
Yep.
But the difference maker is you.
Yeah. 100%. I think the way that I kind of realized that was just to kind of take it back to when I was selling energy supply in a grocery store. Somebody walks in the store to get their groceries, and all of a sudden they're talking to this idiot that's trying to sell them, God knows what. And throughout the conversation, I started to kind of realize that it doesn't even really matter what the product is. It's more so, I get 5-10 minutes into the conversation, all of a sudden they're telling me about their kids or kind of whatever else they have going on in their life. And it's just that personal connection. I think I started to realize the power of that in terms of, if you can make somebody laugh, if you can make somebody smile and they understand you, or, you're vulnerable in different ways, it's just building that trust and building the relationship. And I think, especially when I moved kind of more to the online and remote space, it was very hard for me at the beginning because I was following scripts and thought it was something completely different. And now I've gone back to realizing that it's not. When somebody gets on the other end of the Zoom, it's the same process of getting them to understand that you're a human being, somebody that you can trust, and it's that same kind of game.
And I love it because you were talking about earlier and like, having conversations like with people with the energy in the
Right.
store. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's the game.
Yeah.
It's the game. And when you can look at it like that, of like, it's a game, you can have fun with it. And
Yeah.
when you're having fun, you have better results.
Yes.
And you see some people that go to work and they're struggling and they're laboring. You see that the work that they're putting in, they're not having any fun and people are avoiding them.
Yeah. 100%. No, and I I think I kind of quickly realized that there was an end game for me in that, because I didn't enjoy what I was doing, and I was like, God, I can't keep doing this. It's just I'm just somebody that I just have to feel that excitement for things. So kind of had more of a deadline on that, and how much money, how much can I save up here to where it is a game, and I can set goals for myself. And now the whole goal setting is completely shifted, and in terms of it's genuinely more focused around my personal development within the business, but then also how can I actually help more and more people, and get people to talk about me in terms of the good things that I'm doing, and how they know me, because it's so much more fulfilling, especially just that the thing that I love most about it, honestly. And even like I told you, I'm still so much at the beginning, and I completely understand that I have so many different giants to slay, and things along those lines. But just the idea of just like going from nothing to something, and kind of 0 to 1, and growing it's been the most like valuable experience I think I've ever had. So
You can't take that away. And we talked about the challenges
right.
of everything that comes with entrepreneurship. You're going against the grain, and all that stuff. And there's worries, there's
Yep.
uncertainty, but I wouldn't trade it in for the world.
Yep. Yep.
I've said on the podcast several times, I'm a ruined person. I could never go work for anybody ever again.
Right. Yeah. And I can't remember who it was, but they said something along the lines of once you've had that taste of freedom, I think it was like Naval Ravikant or one of those guys, but it's hard to be employed after that. And I think, um, I mean, I feel the same way, and I think that's part of what the overwhelm comes from is now building something up to where I can see a future in this and see being able to support myself with it. It's so much. It's almost like that feeling of going back is so much stronger, and something that I just can't imagine doing. I feel like every day I wake up and I'm, like I was telling you before, I feel like I'm just obsessed, and I feel so passionate about this, and I have not found, in any job that I've worked, throughout my childhood and the last year, I've never found that in terms of just this burning desire to get started on the thing that you're working on. And the clock doesn't really exist anymore in terms of I'm not watching anything. There's no time limit on it. And that's one of the things that I hated the most was, if I finish everything that I have to do and it's 4:30, you just have to sit there for 30 minutes. I just didn't understand it. So, and now, the time for me extends far past that. And I feel like I'm working harder than ever, but I'm also just, more excited and passionate about life than ever.
And you do have that flexibility. You have everything done by 4:30. You can go take off and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's, 11:30 right now and I'm sitting in your podcast studio, and after this, I'll get a bunch of stuff down and lock in on that. But it's just that freedom to where, you know, I think I've realized like in terms of the actual time I'm putting in, I'm absolutely working more hours now than I was. But it's just the difference in feeling of what that brings. It just doesn't feel like it. And I know it's kind of
Yeah.
like a cliche thing to say, but it truly it just as somebody who is huge into personal development and goal setting, just to kind of sit and think about where I'm going and where I know I'm headed. There's nothing else I'd rather be doing. Um, so
What's so cool, and like I said, we had like a 20-minute conversation before we jumped on
yeah,
Serious Net, and I'm like, let's continue the conversation after this meeting. We'll
right,
have an hour in between, but let's continue it. And hey, let's turn the cameras on
yeah,
because this is the stuff. This podcast is for entrepreneurs. It's for people that are in the game that we're in, or they're sitting there right now and thinking, I want to be in that game. What do I need to do? And when you can hear things like this, it's jumping in, and you can hear that it's worth it. But also, I wanna hit on, because you said something a little bit ago when we were in our meeting that I think is really cool. Because how many people can relate to this? That like you thought that you were not a motivated person.
yeah. No, that's. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to university and to go to Michigan State. Like I said, I'm proud of that. Very thankful for that. But I can definitely speak to throughout my time there. There was nothing that, and I told you I was in kind of the James Madison College, which is kind of government and politics, and had some great professors and everything like that. They taught me all sorts of things, but I just never felt excited and I never felt motivated, especially leading up to end of senior year when they're getting a job and they're excited about becoming a lawyer or a politician or whatever else it is, and I just didn't get it. And that's when like I told you, I started to kind of just wonder, like, am I not motivated, what's going on here? And I just realized now that I just hadn't found that thing, and that thing for me was entrepreneurship, and starting something, and having kind of this seed that you plant and growing it and learning along the way. And yeah, I finally feel now like I just have a vision and have a goal. And it's like one of those things. I used to listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger all the time in the gym, and he says you have to have a vision. You have to have somewhere that you're going, otherwise you kind of just float around.
Yeah,
And that's where I felt like I was. I felt like I was just floating, and I think this opportunity has given me that vision.
I love that. Then Arnold has some
Yeah.
great stuff. But the whole vision thing, I was out to a client out in Arkansas a
Hmm.
couple weeks ago, and I was interviewing his employees and just getting an understanding of what's the culture like, and
Right.
just getting an understanding of the place. And everybody loves this guy. Like he's running a good business. But when I asked them, what do you think the goal is, or what do you think his goal is for this business, and people were like, ooh.
Yeah.
for us to be happy and to make money. And I'm like, well, that's a good goal. How do you quantify that? How do you know when you've made it? And people are like, I don't know. And so when I went back in and asked him, I'm like, hey, not one single person on your team knows where you're going and knows what your goal is. What's your goal? What do you want? And he's like, ooh. And the reason why they don't know is because he didn't know. And so I said, hey, okay, I'm going to take you on vacation.
Right.
Pack. And he's like, okay, what do I pack? And I'm like, and that's a very important question, because I could be taking you to Alaska, and if I'm telling you let's go on vacation, and you start packing warm things, and then we go to a cold place, you gotta know where you're going in order to prepare to get there. And if not, and he's doing 2.6 million a year in his business, so he's like accidentally having success. What could we do when we get purposeful and intentional?
Yep. Yeah, that's huge. And as somebody that's kind of on the other end of that, I met with kind of a mentor that owns a big landscaping company in Ann Arbor, and they handle a ton of accounts and all these things. And he has an end goal, and he has somewhere that he wants to go in terms of eventually selling it. And I think I've kind of realized the importance of that in terms of why am I doing this? Like when I'm 50 cold calls deep or whatever it is. Like why am I here? And for me, I think I've really boiled it down to it's just a freedom thing. Like I want that freedom to be, where I want to, working on what I want, and just have the individuality of just to be able to do that. And it's a very powerful feeling, and something that, I growing up when you're told where to be and what to do and what you're doing, and everything else, that's just so lacking. And I feel like now, kind of getting that taste of freedom, and hearing from talking to other entrepreneurs, and hearing that for them that's one of the things they value most. I can completely relate to that, and something that I haven't found in a lot of other circles.
It really is. It really is huge. And, going back even from that, when you're talking about, am I weird? Am I different? And I wanted to highlight that because there are so many people out there that have entrepreneurs specifically, visionaries specifically, that think that. They think that they're weird, or and if they're around people that are like, why do you think that? Why isn't this enough for you? We can have a lot of guilt, why isn't a job enough for you? I was a sales director for a company. I had all the, ability to do whatever I wanted to do. I could show up whenever I wanted. I never had to check in with my boss or the owner of the company unless I wanted to. I hired everybody, I developed everybody. But then I would wake up in the morning and be like, I don't want to go to work. Why don't I want to go to work? And I'd be like, man, this is really miserable. Why am I so miserable? And then I'm beating myself up of like, Jason, you have everything. Why are you so miserable doing this? And why don't you want to go into work? And like, you've hired all these people. There were aspects I loved about work. I love changing people's lives. I love the one-on-one coaching. I love, like, we talked about earlier, standing up and motivating people and that kind of thing. I loved what we did in resurrecting that business and making changes. I didn't love the day-to-day of being stuck in that job. And so I had to open my business. I thought there was something wrong with me, but at the end of the day, when I opened my business, it was like, oh, this is it. This was what I was supposed to be doing. And even though there's been challenges and there's been days where it's like, why am I doing this? I've never dwelled long on why am I doing this? The answer is right there.
What did it take? What was kind of the moment for you when you shifted and finally decided to, go from what you were doing to then opening your own thing and kind of building that?
It was really cool. I had been with this company for 9 years, and they were millions of dollars in debt. I think I told you a little bit ago. So just a quick story: millions of dollars in debt, and we'd resurrected them. At this point, we were one of the top companies in our industry, and I was having these feelings of like not wanting to be there. And I was also very transparent. I was telling the owner of our company, I want to start my own business. I was, this is what I want to do. I didn't necessarily tell her how miserable I was because I still needed the job. I was making six figures. It's like, and there's an internal belief of like, how am I going to replace this income? I grew up super poor. I grew up with a single mom. And so one of my biggest whys and drivers was to provide my family with the things that I didn't have, a nice house, vacations, a car, all that kind of stuff. And I had achieved that. However, the scary and the uncertainty was, if I go start my business, am I putting that all in danger? Am I putting that into a threat? And so it was just that scary, like, I can't do this. It was New Year's Eve, 2018, and we were talking, me and my wife were talking about like what we're going to do for the next year. And she's like, what does success look like for you? What do you want this year to look like? And I can say, I told her, I don't know. I'm like really stuck, but I can tell you what I don't want it to look like. I can tell you that if I'm with the same company and I'm doing the same job by this time next year, that it's to me, this year's been a failure and I've got to figure out a way. Next day, like 2 days later, I get an email from my boss, Debbie, and she's like, "Hey, Jason, let's meet up at the end of the week on Friday and talk about the direction of the company." It's like we did that every year, no big deal. I wasn't thinking anything about it, right? And so I go, and I woke up that morning and I felt like, "Huh, this could be the end." And I don't know why I felt that. It was just kind of an intuition. I told my wife, I'm like, "I may not have a job after today," and she was like, "Why would you ever say that?" I'm like, I feel it. And I got there, and I'd been a part of so many conversations where we terminated somebody that I got there, and I'm like, this is my last day. She pulled me in the office, and we had a conversation. And she was like, Jason, I appreciate so much that you've done for us. You've put us. She's like, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the things that you've done and where you put us. And she was like, she had a lot of changes where she was able to then come and take more responsibility in the company. Her kids were gotten older. She'd gotten divorced, like all these things. So she had a lot of free time. And she was like, and I see you in all the difference that you've made with us, and you need to release that in the world. And I know that if I don't push you out of this plane, you're not going to leave. And so she pushed me out of the plane. She gave me a really big, nice check so I could go start my business and take care of my family and pay bills. Well, it was awesome. It was like going home and like being super emotional and crying. Like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders, but at the same time, the thoughts of like, wow, I did the right things for the right people. I attached my cart and did the right things for the right people, and she appreciated me and she gave me a chance to go out and live my dream. Now, here's a limiting belief. I had enough money to support myself and grow my business and, take care of my family and all that kind of stuff. My wife was working too for probably about 6 months. And I knew that 6 months, maybe a year if I really stretched it out, if I was making money in between. And so I'm like, this is going to be the best year of my life. And then I'll go back and get a job, like this is gonna be the best year ever. And that was like this belief that I had that I wasn't gonna last long. So 6 months in, I'm running out of money. And I'm sitting there and I'm like steaming my clothes. My grandma died and she was like a second mom to me. My wife had just got fired from her job, like let go of from her job. And so I'm sitting there like, whew, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back and get a job?
Right.
Am I going to go stock shelves at Myers at night and then work this business in the daytime? Like, what am I going to do? And I was sitting and I was having a pity party for myself. And then I started asking myself different questions like, Jason, what are you doing? And I started thinking about my life. And every time that I've had my back against the wall is when I've had the biggest comeback. Like every time that I've experienced the worst moment of my life, that's been the springboard for the best moments of my life. And so it's like a reminder of like, Jason, like you're just against the wall. It's time to come out fighting. Right. And then I realized that I was doing what I teach other people not to do. We talked about sales and serving people at the highest level. I made a whole career off of being in teaching people how to be the difference. And in the major discovery that I discovered through this process is that most sales is done from an inward place, meaning what's in it for me. And it's not maybe sound greedy, but we're human beings. And so I start my business and I'm like, I need to make money. I need to support my family. I need to pay my bills. Right. And so I've got these overarching things going on. Like I'm not making any money. I need to start making money. Right. How do I go do that? And so if that's my overarching, that's my main thought, then I'm going into these meetings thinking about how can I get money from this person versus how I've built my whole career was being a servant in asking people questions and getting to know them and understanding their challenges. And then I can serve them and help them or not. Or maybe I know somebody that can help them with the challenge that they have. And then I dominate their space, right? Because I introduce them to somebody that then takes care of them and that then speaks highly of me. And it's like dominating a space. And maybe they didn't need me now, but they either refer somebody to me later or they do business with me later. I wasn't doing any of that though, because I started my business and I was in my head about I need to make money. And once I had that major discovery that even if I'm going out and I'm trying to coach people how to do this, I'm being the opposite of what I'm trying to coach. So how am I ever going to do this right? It was like, boom. And it's something that now, even to this day, as I'm going out and having a conversation with somebody, it's like doing just a little meditation quick of like, who is this person? What's going on in their life? What's going on in their business? What difference do they make? What challenges are they having? Versus like, Ooh, it'd be awesome if this was a sale today.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome if we get some money today. And when I flipped that mindset, it started happening almost accidentally. And I'm a storyteller. I believe stories are data with soul. Like when you hear somebody's story, you hear so much information in that story. And I think that's how I've always been successful at sales is one, I've listened to people, but then two, I can always relate it to a story. And so I go out and I start telling people stories and they're like, oh, I think I need to hire you. Somebody's like, I'd have friends that sit down with me and like we'd have a coffee conversation and they say, what's going on? What's a great client that you're working with right now? And I'd tell them a situation and they'd be like, oh, I need help with that. Like,
Yeah.
what would it look like to do that?
Man, that's a help them out and relate, but you're always still thinking like, there's a deal on the line and there's money here. Like, how do you kind of manage that? Kind of that thought in the back of your head to where it's not, it's kind of more just a thought as opposed to dominating your mind.
It's shifting that focus, like I said, back to thinking about them. Now I've got to be intentional, and we do have to worry about it. We do have to have like a thought on ourselves and have an understanding of how we serve, and we need business, we need to eat, we need to pay our bills, we need to do all that stuff, right? But I know that when I listen well enough, that I can point somebody in the right direction. And so it comes pretty easy because it's like something I've practiced quite a bit. Even this whole podcast thing, like I said, it didn't start off as a business idea. It didn't start off as a way to make money. It started off as a way as like I didn't love making content by myself. In the meantime, I'm having coffee conversations and conversations like this, and I'm like, that's exciting. Now, okay, let's turn it into something where I'm helping them promote themselves. And so it's that go-giver mentality of like, here, I'm promoting you. And then I like through that, I found a problem.
Right. 100%.
And
So
then all I had to do was say, hey, you're not like, why aren't you posting on social media? I don't know how to do. Like, hey, take the clips and edit them. Wow, that sounds like a pain in the butt. You know what? If that's not something you're going to do, I can do it for you because there's so much power in it. This is what it looks like.
wow.
Definitely, let's do it.
Wow. So did it came more out of kind of just, you kind of found the problem in the process of what you're doing as opposed to, it wasn't like hey, I'm going to start a podcast. They're not going to want to something like that.
All this stuff unfolded by being a problem solver. And that's what I'm so excited about you is I think even as you start out and you're doing these things, you're going to find things through the process and it could morph, you still may do a lot of the reputation management, but how much does that morph and how many other services are you doing because you're finding new ways to solve problems?
Yeah, it's definitely something I'm dealing with right now is because I found like when somebody does have a different problem or at least the stage that I'm at now when they ask for something else, I feel stupid saying no or and with certain things like, I'm not running ads or anything. I don't really want to do that at least right now. But I'll say, hey, that's not something that I focus on. I'm happy to refer you to somebody else. And that's definitely a huge trust builder, like you said, in terms of just solving the problem. But in my mind, and I guess, probably everybody goes through this at some stage, but how focused do I want to stay? And, how many services am I comfortable offering to where you can maintain the quality and be able to grow, but also not just doing a million things for everybody and customizable work to where you don't have any time to then grow your business and all you're focused on is just delivering as opposed to growing your own business.
Well, and that's huge. And, and we talked about the solopreneur thing, and I've had support. My wife does a lot of stuff on the back end. And, I've had people that have come into the business and have helped out. But for the most part, I've been doing coaching and consulting. I've had a lot of collaborations and like partnerships from that standpoint.
Right.
But I've done a lot of solopreneur work because I've been coaching and I'm consulting and I'm speaking and I'm doing the podcast. Now, as this is growing and I've got this studio and there's a whole bunch of editing and all this kind of stuff that comes with it, I don't want to do any of that stuff. I can't do that stuff. If I'm tied up doing that stuff, I can't go out and have more conversations and meet more people and build more relationships. I can't do the things that, keep my business running or doing the things that light me up.
Right.
Am I good at editing? I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. Do I like it? It's fun. But at the same time, as I'm sitting there on hour number 3 editing video, I'm like, I could be having this conversation that we're having right now. I could be working with a client. Instead, I'm doing something that I'm trapped in the house in the computer just looking at a screen.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I can relate to that now to where I feel like I'm kind of on at least on the back end. I really enjoy the front end of initiating conversation and nurturing a relationship and closing a deal, but then like I was up at 4:30 this morning trying to get something done for somebody and spent 4 hours on that. And I'm like, what else could I, other than sleeping, like what else could I be doing during this time that's, gonna help it grow? And at what point is it too much to where you need to figure out how to get somebody else on board or to delegate, some aspect of the work. So that's definitely in terms of just bottlenecks overall and just time. I'm just like quickly starting to realize just how little time you actually have as you start to, go from 0 to 1 to maybe 5 to 10, even in that range. Just the time just disappears, and I don't even realize how I
Yes.
didn't realize how quickly it would disappear. I would say honestly, up until the last couple weeks, it was relatively smooth sailing, and now I emails come out of nowhere and texts or a problem, something's broken, and then all of a sudden, what I was working on or trying to plan something is completely out the window, and now I'm spending my time on fixing things that are broken. So yeah, I think, and especially meeting you is so huge, and being able to talk to you and pick your brain about like how can you continue to make sure that you deliver the same quality while also scaling, especially something like like you said, you've done coaching and speaking and working with different clients in terms of being able to delegate time to everybody to where nobody's suffering.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so what I would say, there's a quadrant, and like it's a four square quadrant, and it's like the things your unique differences, the things that light you up, they're the things that make your business run. You have to do them. You love doing them. Like, that there's this quadrant. List off those things. Like you love the business development, the
Yep.
conversation piece. That's probably something that you'll do for a long time. Then what are the things that you're good at, you enjoy doing, but they take your time? And then what are the things that you are good at, or what are the things that you do but you hate? And so like, and then just taking those, and the things that you do but you hate and you're not even good at, like those got to go off the
Get
plate.
rid of them.
Like get rid of them. Like accounting and stuff like that. You might be good at that. I don't know.
No, not at all.
But get rid of that stuff, because then it's tying up your time, right? And then the things that you're doing for the reputation management, the things like you're good at it. You probably don't hate doing it, but it's taking your time from doing the things that you're uniquely talented at, that's going to grow your business. And so those are the things that you can pay someone less than $20 an hour, or less than $25 an hour, whatever that looks like, then take that stuff off your plate, and you're then able to go grow more business.
Yeah.
I always ask people that I'm working with, like, it can be scary to make that leap and add an employee on, but how much more money can you make if you're out and you're having the conversations and you're freed up from that?
Yeah, 100%. I think at least from, some people that I've listened to or followed, people make it look cool to be the only person that's doing everything, or like
It's not cool.
yeah. No, I quickly realized like I would, there's so many things already that I would much rather not do at all. And like one of the biggest things for me is anytime I talk to somebody, I can say, hey, you're going to start seeing the results within 24 to 48 hours in terms of, getting them reviews or helping them in that way. And that's something that can actually be done. But now when it's, I've like, let's say I had a great day and got two clients on board. Now it's like things are backing up to where it's that deliverable is being, it just becomes harder to actually deliver that result when you have, two or three people that you're trying to set up or fulfill the service with. And then, you have current clients that are emailing you or telling you something's wrong. And yeah, it's definitely that management. And I've been working with another guy who I met on a trip named Brad Telepa, who does a lot like time management stuff, and that's been super helpful to try and realize like, hey, it is okay maybe to delegate a time in the day to respond to people, as opposed to I have to respond to this within the first minute to 5 minutes. And I want to be that person that can do that, but I'm just realizing that it's not completely possible.
It's not possible, and we feel like because we're bound to these devices, right? And we know that everybody knows we have it in our hand at all times, so we feel like we need to be accessible those 24 hours, and it really is professionally acceptable to get back to somebody within a day.
Right.
And especially if you let people know, and it's like setting expectations that, hey, we will get back to you within 24 hours when you message us, or 12 hours, or whatever your commitment is. It might not be right away because we're busy working with clients.
Yeah, and I'm trying to do my best, especially with the I've now realized how important, on the onboarding, whether that's you're a landscaping company or an online service provider, you're doing coaching or whatever, making sure that both people understand what the expectations are, and
Yes.
also telling people, hey, we agreed on this at this price. You can't ask me to do other things and also expect, I'm gonna have to charge more to do these other things because it's taking more of my time and um, you know setting expectations, and I didn't realize the value of it first. Like, hey, I sold them, it's all good now. But then there's the relationship after that, and obviously, running a business, you want them to continue working with you as
Yes.
long as possible. And I now realize just how important setting expectations is to make sure that that's a positive relationship going forward.
It's huge. It's framing it. I worked with a sales guy for an IT company that I worked with. They were my client, and I worked and mentored the sales guy every week. And this guy was aggressive. He was a go getter. Like, he'd make calls. He'd stop in the building. He didn't have that fear. Like, he'd call relentlessly, and because he would call relentlessly, people thought that he was like commission brass, super salesy. Like, and people started complaining to his boss or the owner of the company, "Hey, your sales guy is like a rabid dog. You need to pull him back. Like, he's like won't leave me alone, right?"
Right.
And so I'm in a session with him, and he's like, "What is wrong with these people? Like, I'm not just after their money." He was like, "They told me they had a deadline. If they didn't get that done within the week, that they were going to be really behind on their deadline, and it was going to be major problems for their company. And so because they told me that, I'm making sure that they're going to get it in before they hit their deadline." And I was like, "Okay, so frame that."
Yeah.
When you're talking with your clients, let them know, "Hey, you said this, and because of that, I'm intense. I'm one of the things you're gonna get with me is that I make sure that we stay on target, and so I'm gonna call you, because I care. And if anytime you're like, no, I don't want to work with you, just tell me no, and I will stop calling you."
Right.
And he did that, and all of a sudden it changed the perspective of this guy super salesy to, oh, this guy actually cares about us, and he wants us to get it done, and it changed the close rate like dramatically overnight.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. Just I've started to try and do that. Like, hey, if I'm going to keep calling you,
Yeah.
if you don't tell me that you don't want to work with me, and just tell me, because honestly, it frees up mental space, and I don't have to keep following up for no reason and wasting my time.
Yep.
And I think especially, and I'm guilty of this too, when somebody is reaching out to you and trying to start a partnership or sell you something, whatever it is, like, you immediately feel, as the person being contacted, you feel like you're in the power position, and your time maybe is more valuable than the person that's on the other end of the phone. But it's not. Like, you both have something to offer, and something, you're both valuable. And like you said, just set the expectation of, hey, I'm going to follow up with you, and keep contacting you. Just let me know if this isn't something you want, and I can move on, and I won't bug you anymore.
It's a win when they say no, because like
Oh
you said,
yeah.
you cross it off the list and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And you're not going to close everybody, and it's looking for the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I mean, there's a barber shop I wouldn't name, but there's a barber shop that I, did a trial for and followed up with them for months to even get it, and then never ended up working together, and followed up multiple times after that. And months later, I'm just realizing, like, just tell me that you didn't want to work together, and I don't have to waste. It's almost just even more so the action of doing it. It's like the mental energy of having that person in the back of your head,
Yep.
especially with sales and anything. Like, it's such a you have to manage so many different relationships at the same time. Like, in your pipeline, you have these different people that are at different stages, and just having that one that's it's kind of just like almost junk mail at a certain point. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it's just taking up space at this point.
Absolutely. Versus they just kind of bless and release you by saying it's not a fit.
Right.
Or just even if they have to message you, whatever it is, now you have more time for other people that actually do need your help.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to ask you is, how do you determine? Because a lot of the times, let's say you have like a first interaction with somebody, and they're like, I'm probably not your guy, and then for whatever reason, you get them to come through, and they're giving you referrals and the testimonials, and they absolutely love you. How do you, in sales, how do you determine at what point, maybe to continue moving on with nurturing that person, or trying to get them to come through? like turning that
Yeah.
I'm not your guy into definitely your guy. At what point do you kind of abandon that process or realize, hey, this is one that's worth continuing to work for or not?
This is a really good question. And to me, when I was like, discovery is so important to me. And, as I'm getting like I said, when I'm going to the meeting, what's really awesome about all this is most people don't ask me questions about me because they already know me. Like
Right.
and that was what I noticed. One thing about all the content is like, people would invite me to a meeting and they wouldn't have to ask me questions about me. So
Yep.
what I love is like going out and asking just a bunch of questions and understanding, can I help this person? Is there something that literally, here's a good example. I had a lady, this was a few years ago. I knew I could help her. In fact, I knew if I didn't help her, that her business was going to close down. She was super emotional about it. She said that in all the words that she was saying. She needed to clear a mental block that she was having in her business development. And if she didn't do that, it wasn't going to look good for her really quickly. So we get down to the end of the call and she was like, I need this, but I can't afford it. She's like, check back with me in June. And this is like, so 2 months down the road, she asked me to follow up in 2 months down the road. And I was like,
Right.
that's great. I definitely can. However, what's going to be different in June?
Right.
And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you just said that like you're struggling right now. You don't have the money. If you don't do anything different right now, how are you going to be able to afford anything in June? Like, you're probably not going to have a
Right.
business in June, right? And she was like, oh, you're right. I'm like, so how can you make something happen, whether it's with me or not? How can you make something happen between now and then, right? Like,
Yeah.
what can you do now in order to start growing your business? Because if not, you might as well close now.
Wow. That's a great frame of reference, honestly. I think, and even just the kind of, maybe follow up later or follow up down the line, it's obviously, specific to what their situation is. And I think it's normally a lot of the times, um, it's kind of a light way to brush you off and just kind of a soft no, like, hey, follow up. But it's definitely, like you said, if somebody's struggling and they're going to push it off a couple months, what situation are you going to be in then as opposed to now?
Absolutely. And then, I'm as much as, you're the customer's qualifying me, I'm qualifying them. I don't
100%.
want to work with anybody, especially from a coaching standpoint. I've learned early through leadership, from a job that you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And here's a way that I thought that I was wrong, right? Like, I'm in leadership. I was a sales director for this organization. At one point, I probably had 60 people that reported to me, or that were under my leadership, right? I I didn't I would neglect the people at the bottom. Not always. I would give them their chance, but the people that just had a broke mindset that I would dump time into and they wouldn't do anything different, I didn't like. They would just exist. And I always felt bad, like and those people would end up not liking me or whatever the case may be, or they would say like, "Oh, he's paying attention to his favorites." Those people just didn't last long. They were the people that were at the bottom that were in a victim mentality, and nothing turns me off more than a victim mentality. And I was beating myself up because these people are falling through the cracks. No, they're just not my people. I can't make a change in them. And I knew that I was working the 80-20 rule. I was spending 80% of my time with the 20% of the people that were the difference makers, that were the coachable people. And it was probably more than 20%. That's, when you're working with a big organization. But then those people, you empower them and they go and they work with and they begin empowering. And we start looking for people that match that mindset. It's the same thing with clients. I don't want to spend time trying to make you do something.
Right.
One of my favorite clients, he came to me and was like, I can't afford, we got to the end of the session and he was like, I can't afford to pay you. It was at one point in the conversation. When he left with what we did in the session, he applied all the things that we talked about. Applied a lot of the things. And within 1 week, he closed enough sales to pay for the next 3 months of our time together. So it's like, and that to me, that's my client. Let's go. If I put people through boot camp and people come in and it's a group coaching, we get intensive, we do role playing because to me it's taking action. We're not going to just learn something. I'm not going to just sit here and talk your face off. You're going to put it into action because then if you don't, when you go out into the real world, most likely you're not going to put it. I think you will because you're a hustler, but so many other people will not. I would leave a seminar and I'd put something into action. Most people do not put anything into action, right?
Yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable and then they feel stupid and like they didn't do it right and they did it once and it got messed up and so they're never going to do it again
Yep.
versus practicing it. Now, through these group sessions, the people that like constantly text me and let me know about their what happened, like this conversation, like, oh, I killed it here today. And then they ask me a question about what to do next, or like they said,
Right.
hey, I've got this challenge. How do I overcome this? Those people light me up, and those are my one-on-one people. And those,
Yeah.
I never feel bad for selling. I never feel like I'm pressure selling because I'm like, hey, what could we do if we went one-on-one?
Yeah.
And you're like, do you think I'm a good client? Like, well, look what you're doing in a group setting. What could you do if we did one-on-one? And you're like, good point.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit more about the actual process of putting it into action too, because it's something that I've experienced, and I know probably anybody else that is working on starting a business or has any idea is you can just sit in that sit in that phase of dreaming about it and watching videos about it, and kind of just a lot of people call it the mental masturbation of where you're just like you just think about all the success you could have, and then
Yeah.
yeah, the actual effort of making the calls or doing the work, following up, and especially something with anybody starting a business. I had somebody tell me that all that matters, and Hormozy talks about this a lot too, is you just have to be bumping into things, telling people who you are,
Yep.
and what you do, and you're just going to get rejected so much. And that's the thing that I avoided for a long time, and I think most people do, is it's a lot more fun to tinker with a website and
Yeah.
make your website and figure out what your logo is going to be and tell all your friends about it. And then when the action comes, you realize you're like, okay, this is the action, this is the thing that I need to be doing.
When I first started my business, I was running into all the people that were like, they knew, like, I would have great conversation with them. They read all the books, they went to the seminars, they did the things, they knew what I was talking about. They just weren't doers. They were doing the mental masturbation. And I love how like you're reading and you're consuming all this stuff. There's uncertainty and there's fear out here. And so to go do it. And then the problem that happens with this is you read and you consume information that now starts to conflict, and it starts to create this uncertainty and unconfidence of like, oh, I was really convinced this is the way, but now this thing is saying that's not the way, and now I've got a confusion, and now I'm really stuck in this rut. You got to go do it. You got to go figure it out. And there are people telling you different messages and different things, because there's a lot of things that work for some people that don't work for others. You got to go and figure it out, but the only way you're going to do that is by go taking action.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's great to hear you say that, because especially in something like the agency space or whatever you want to call it, like marketing services, there's so many videos, because it's kind of like it's a cool time or whatever to be starting your own business, or it's almost like it seems glamorous. And you'll watch something that's like, hey, go high ticket or sell high ticket. Then the next video is like, don't sell high ticket, sell low ticket, and here's how I make the most money in the world doing this or whatever else. And I just realized I have to stop. You got to put that away. And if it's not something that's directly serving me with maybe like a specific tactic in business, or I just got to stop consuming the information, because it just gets overwhelming. And then
Yeah.
it can, if you have any doubts, it can start to reinforce that of maybe I should jump ship, and the whole shiny object syndrome of just trying the new thing and never just sticking with something and going through it.
It's like that old picture of the diamond miner in the
Yes.
like, and it's like the wall is that thin and he's turning around and leaving. It's being consistent with something. In boot camp, one of the things that we do, we set commitments, and then every week at the beginning of boot camp, we break down the commitments and what they actually did. And instead of saying like, just letting them talk free will of like, oh, I made 10 calls, but then this happened and this happened, because there's always this self-doubt. What worked? What didn't work? What did you learn? Because when we can go through and debrief in this type of a process, we can understand that not everything was wrong and not everything was right. A lot of times when we look at like nothing worked, well, nothing worked. One, you made the 10 calls. You didn't make any last week, and so good for you. Like, give yourself a pat on the back for that. You took the action. Now, guess what? You're not going to be the best phone caller after making your first 10 phone calls. Like, you got to keep going and taking the action. What did you learn from this? I suck on my first phone call of the day. I don't know, like,
Oh, 100%.
like I'm tripping over myself, and then I learn and I adjust as I go.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think at first I was so excited to get it. Like when somebody I get to, give them my value proposition or whatever, and then they'd say, yeah, but this, and or kind of just throw whatever objection. I'd be like, All right, sounds good. Have a
Sounds
nice
good.
day.
Have a great day. Call me when you need me.
And then just going down the list and saying, all right, I just made those 10 calls. And then I get to the end, I'm like, I didn't actually put any effort into that. I was more so just trying to get it done. And I was trying to get off the call faster than the guy I want to be talking to. And yeah, it's shifted in my mindset. And, like we were talking about before, trying to make it a game of just improving and putting your effort into the things that you're doing and not just seeing it as another task, because then it just becomes something that you don't want to work on anymore. And then it's no longer fun.
It's no longer fun.
Yeah, and I mean I know it's not all supposed to be fun, but yeah, I'm trying to find the joy, especially in just the grind.
We have to make money. That's the flat out. In order to survive, we have to make money, and we can do that in any sort of way. Why not do something that really lights you up and you have fun with? Because you're gonna be more successful that way too, because it lights you up and you have all the energy for it.
Right, for sure. Yeah, and that's what I'm constantly learning and figuring out. What are those things that I can spend more of my time on that are still going to excite me, because and one thing that I've been doing is I take like a little video every day. So at the end of the day, take a video, what went well, kind of just current state. And even now, I've been doing those videos for almost like 150 days now. And looking back to day one of that,
that's killer.
It's so helpful to or look at a video of me just sitting there with my hands in my head, like just having such a hard time, because especially with something like this, it's such a roller coaster of emotion and ups and downs. I never could have imagined that. But to just push through the hard time and get to that next peak, it's just so valuable and so fulfilling. And to be up there and know that there's another valley coming, it just helps me a lot with mental framing, and realize that, just kind of buckle in here, because, it's coming.
But man, this has been so exciting. This is like the whole thing, and like getting this perspective. You're light years. You're exciting because it's like light years ahead of where I was at my point. I didn't start my business until I was almost 40 years old. And like even knowing what I wanted to do was like more like 30. How old are you?
I'm 23.
23. Yeah. So, but to have that revelation is absolutely huge, and I'm jealous because I have so much content. But to have those daily videos is incredible, and like I would probably put out one of those ones of like you with your hand. Like that's just good stuff. Like that's good content to share.
Yeah. No, I really want to, start that journey of documenting it, and I've heard so many people talk about how valuable that can be because I mean I think the thing that I enjoy most is talking to other people and seeing them succeed. And, one day I would love to move into some sort of space where I can help other people do that. But in terms of, I don't feel like I'm anywhere near an authority position on that to be able to say, hey, I can, I'm going to coach you on this, when I don't feel like I'm anywhere near that point. But I think just the documentation.
It's a killer. Yeah.
And having people be able to follow along of, that's when you hit your first sale, or your first 1,000 or 2,000, and just being able to kind of see that journey, I think on the other end of that will be so much more valuable.
It's so much more valuable, and you've got a document that's so awesome that you can go back to it. I think have you heard of Russell Brunson?
I have, yeah.
So have you? Yeah, he did his podcast, and he was like just in his car struggling. His first episodes, if you go back to them, were just him struggling and talking it out, and he's like so vulnerable. And he was like talking about in one of the expert secrets that I just read not that long ago. He was talking about how those have been the biggest viewed podcasts he's had, and it's like people can go back and hear the journey from then to where he's at now, which is, again, that's a really cool documented process.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I'm so thankful for people like you that are doing this, and highlighting stories, and also building their own business, because I think honestly the thing that has kept me going so far, and the thing that gives me the most motivation or drive to wake up every day and get rejected, or kind of just move through the things, are listening to other people and realizing like, hey, it's just part of it. Like it's everybody is going through that. And to know, like Alex Hormozy calls it the lonely chapter, like where you feel like you're different from the people that you were friends with before, but you're not successful enough to be friends with the people you want to be friends with. And kind of that idea of like everybody roots for you at the start of the race and the end of the race, and everything in between it's like, good luck, buddy. And like listening to podcasts like this and hearing stories like yours, it just that's the kind of the fuel for me at least, and I feel like can help so many people. So I appreciate it.
Oh, that's killer, man.
Thank you.
We could talk all day. I
Yeah.
know you have a limit, so I'm going to cut us
Yeah.
off.
Thank you.
But this has been awesome. I'm so glad, Andrew. Andrew Black, if anybody's wondering, Andrew Black is the guy that connected us. I've had a few guests on that I've shouted out Andrew. Andrew, you're the man. I appreciate you constantly sending me really awesome people. I had no doubt Hayden was going to be great, but man, this has been really fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, and looks like we're gonna partner together, so that's awesome. But also just him without hardly even knowing me on one conversation, connecting me with somebody as amazing as you and Steven's just I can't thank you enough, and thank you for having me on. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
my pleasure. It's been fun.
Thank
Cool.
you.